Good afternoon, and welcome to another live broadcast in the Authentic Married Woman. I am Karen Seitz, the facilitator for the Authentic Married Woman, and I am also a coach and a mentor for married women. And I teach them how to be responsible for their happiness so that they can finally have the lives and the marriage that they want and let go of being unhappy in their marriages. And today I am joined by David Cope, founder of a New Life Center. David, it's always lovely to do these videos with you. Thank
Yeah,
you for joining us today.
thank you. It's, it's a pleasure to do this with you too. It's always fun sharing this information to the ladies of our group so we can give them hope and possibilities for a marriage that they've always dreamed of. I got involved in wanting to have a loving and intimate relationship after my divorce. It might sound like, well, why did you wait till after your divorce? But actually, even when I was married, I worked really hard to try to do the things. I was a good man to try to make my wife happy, but it never seemed to be enough. And eventually, we ended up in getting divorced. So after my divorce, I spent some time together reflecting and realized that I didn't want to be on my deathbed and wishing I had a loving and intimate relationship. So I did some more research and tried to find out what was the answers, what's the secret to a happy marriage. And because I was spending time with myself, I realized that the secret to a happy marriage was me, meaning I have to find that love and intimacy within myself, and that I have to do that in a way that I don't expect my partner to provide that for me. Because if don't love myself and have intimacy with myself, nothing that my partner can do that will give it to me. So I have to find that within myself. And then I take the burden and the responsibility off my partner to do the things that make me happy or fill me because I'm doing that myself. And that's really the kind of the foundation of what we teach at a New Life Center with my partner Peggy. And today our topic kind of coincides with that message. Can you share our topic and then go into the three principles of our Facebook group and relationship strategy?
Can. So the topic of our video today is what? Happiness is an inside job?
Good. You
And
did that really well. Yeah,
thank you. I
yeah.
was practicing. No. And the principles for our Facebook group and for what we teach, the principles that I do my best to live by in my own
Mhm.
life. The first is that you are responsible for your happiness. It's exactly what the topic of our video is really about today, that happiness really is an inside job. It's not just pretty words
Yeah,
or words that sound good. And I know for me and the women that I work with, we have to be taught. We have to be taught how to work that and apply that in our lives. It doesn't just happen.
yeah,
And so that's why we really want to talk about that today, and we'll get
yeah,
more into that.
yes.
The second principle, which also seems pretty, oh, yeah, that makes sense, but we have a really hard time applying this one,
Mm.
is that the only person you have any control over to change is yourself. And so often, including myself and many of the women that I work with, we get so lost
Mm.
in trying to change our husbands and pointing out all their flaws and the things that they need to work on. And if they just did this and if they just did that, everything would be solved. And that's a trap,
Mm.
because you can't change anyone outside of you. You have no power to do that. So if you want to change your experience, if you want to solve the issues in your
Mm.
marriage and in your life, then you've got to take the reins and be the one to step up and change. Because again, you're the only one you have any control over to change.
Can I interrupt you? I hear the women that I worked with over the years,
Yeah.
hundreds of women over the years. Yeah, but why doesn't he have to change first? Or
Mm.
you don't know my husband. He does this. What's the magic when a woman's with a a good man, when she changes? Why does that work? What's the
Yeah.
psychology behind that?
Well, when we're constantly trying to change our husband or trying to change our partner, what that does is it really pushes a good man away. They feel like they're wrong, like they can't do anything right, and they end up shutting down in the relationship as a response to the walls that we put up.
Mhm.
Because when we're focused on our husband changing and focused on changing them and they don't, and we're unhappy on the inside, we unconsciously blame them
Mhm.
for our unhappiness and we put walls around our hearts. And
Mhm.
we mistakenly think that our husbands can't feel that, or that those
Mhm.
walls don't have consequences, and they do. And so when we can go first and realize nobody put our walls up except for ourselves, nobody put my walls up except for me, and that pushes a good man away and makes him feel unsafe in the relationship. When I can do the work to let my walls down and be vulnerable, what I've learned in my own marriage,
Mhm.
ladies, I'm doing this work in my own marriage. I know this works, which is why I'm so passionate about it. Is as I drop my walls and show up in my relationship with my husband, who's a great man,
Mhm.
he is right there. And as I think I commented earlier in a post today, he wants to go out and get the stars and moon for me and is there in all the ways that I always wanted him to be. but but I had to go first, and I had to look within myself and be those things for myself that I always wanted him to be for me.
Yeah.
And when I do that, it is like David said, it's like magic. A good man will step up with us. They're naturally loving and caring. They
Mhm.
want to be there. But let's be honest, our walls can be quite prickly and we can be quite what's the word, vicious sometimes, or hard,
Insensitive.
insensitive,
Mhm.
to be around when we have our walls up, and men can cower to that and become scared of that. It's very impactful to them, and we need to realize that
Mhm.
and take responsibility for the consequences that come with us putting our walls up and pushing them away and wanting to change them.
And thank you, Karen. That's good.
Mhm.
And also to know that the reason why we're focusing on the women's issues in this and women's changing is because this is a women's group.
Yes,
And
good point.
and remind you that we also have men and talk to men and have what the responsibilities that men need to do in a relationship. So please, women, don't think that this is all on your shoulders and the men have no responsibility, because they do, and we teach men how to relate and have a healthy relationship with themselves so they can bring that into the marriage. But it's very powerful when we realize we can only change ourselves and take that on as a responsibility.
Great. So the third principle, we have one more. The third principle is that what it really means to be an authentic married woman or just an authentic woman in general is really about having a relationship with yourself and feeling good about who you are. And that takes hard work,
Mm-hmm.
to get to know who we are and know what we like and don't like. And then we can show up in our marriages as our whole selves
Mm-hmm.
instead of getting lost from ourselves looking for that experience in our husbands, which really sets a marriage or a relationship up to fail. So those are our
Thank you.
principles.
Thank
Of
you.
course.
So, what's the title of our talk again today?
See if I can do it as good as the
Okay.
first time. It's what? Happiness is an inside job? That's the title of our video
And
today.
what's the myth that we're trying to bust today?
The myth we're trying to bust is that when you go to marriage counseling, how marriage counseling is set up is that it's meant to teach your husband what he has to do to meet your needs so that you can be happy. And what that does is if you're already unhappy, there's nothing he's going to do. Even if he does all the things, you're going to find fault in it. You're going to it's not enough. It's not how you want it. It's not the right way. And if you're unhappy, there's nothing anyone else can do to make you happy. So it's a fantasy thinking that if your husband meets your needs in those ways, that it will somehow make you happy, and it
Yeah.
doesn't.
Yeah.
What it actually does is it makes you a victim in your marriage, powerless to do anything about your
Mhm.
unhappiness and powerless to change because you're putting that responsibility into someone else's hands who you have no control over to change.
Thank you, Karen. That's
Mhm.
great. So, one of the things that we wanted to talk about why women struggle with truly grasping that happiness is an inside job. That and I know um, when I was married, my wife would constantly tell me, I would be happy, David, if you would change. I would be happy if it wasn't for you. And I honestly believed her. And I worked really hard to try to do the things, and it never seemed to work. I went to counseling. I worked on myself, and because I had 4 kids, and I wanted the marriage to work, and I would do everything I could. And after the divorce, I had this moment of realizing I never could have made her happy because she wasn't happy within herself, and it was such a moment of, oh my gosh, well, of course. But when we're stuck in our marriage and we're struggling with our issues, whether it's men or women, we lose sight of really what's happening. We get caught up and we victim, we blame, and we have resentment and we have hurt. And before you know, we're not talking, and we've lost what really makes for a healthy marriage, or maybe we didn't even know. So the reason why women struggle with realizing that happiness is an inside job, I think is a good place to start is the quote, Karen.
Mm,
And if you
yeah.
can read that and we can take the quote and break it down and see what's the struggles that might happen in that quote. So we had a quote a couple of weeks ago in our Facebook group, which was, what was the quote again?
Yeah, this was our quote from last week. And
Oh,
as I read this, it's really important that, and I have to do this for myself as well, that you really slow down within yourself to really listen to hear what this is trying to say, and then we're going to break it down even
mhm,
more. No person will make you happy unless you decide to be happy.
mhm.
Your happiness will not come to you. It can only come from you.
Wow. So can you break that down for them and
Yeah.
explain what that means?
So the first sentence in the quote is no person will make you happy unless you decide to be happy.
Mm,
And what that really means is that until you decide within yourself that you want to be happy and that you're ready to do the hard work to do that for yourself, you will always be caught in the trap
mm,
of looking for someone outside of you or
mm,
something else outside of you to make you happy. And when we do that, we undermine what we really want. And that emptiness or an unhappiness inside of us never gets healed. And we become even more trapped in how unhappy we are. And then we become even more desperate in looking for and grabbing for the people and things in our life to make us happy.
wow. And then how hard was that for you to grasp when you slowed down, and what did you have to do?
It's really hard work. It's really hard work to let this in a way where you actually truly understand it
Mm,
and you really know what it means in your heart, not just intellectually of like, oh, that sounds really great. Yeah, that makes sense.
mm,
We can never really grasp it until we feel
mm,
what this is really trying to say. And then for me, why it was so hard because it to slow down and really let this in and really understand what this meant was so hard because I everything that I always wanted happiness to be outside of me,
mm,
my fantasy gets completely threatened.
mm.
And I feel that threat inside of myself, and I want to protect everything that I ever thought I knew to be true. I don't want to risk letting that go to
Beautiful.
find my happiness within myself because it feels really scary to
Yeah,
do that.
that was beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing so heartfelt and deeply.
yeah, of course. So the next sentence is your happiness will not come to you. And that piece, what that really means is it's not coming from anywhere else outside of you. It's not coming from your husband. It's not coming from your family, or I know this is really hard to hear, or even your children. That if the more we wait for
Mm,
things to change, the more we wait for things to just happen and hope and dream without any responsibility or action on our parts, we're going to be waiting forever because it's not coming from outside of you.
Yeah. Thank
And
you.
and that's what the next piece means of it can only come from you. That it really is nowhere else but within yourself. And if you want to find that, then you've got to do the hard work to uncover that within yourself, which is why we often actually really push this
Mhm.
experience away. And we might
Mhm.
say, no, I want to be happy. I'm doing the work to be happy. And we're fooling ourselves unconsciously. It's not on purpose.
Mhm.
Because in order to do this, in order to have your happiness come from within you, you've got to face yourself and you've got to look at all the ways that you've made yourself unhappy,
Mhm.
looking for your happiness outside of you.
Yeah.
And that takes courage and a commitment
Mhm.
to yourself that we are often, again, feel very threatened by because it means we have to let go of our beliefs and our fantasies that we thought would be the magic pill in our
Yeah.
lives. And that can feel
Beautiful.
really scary. Yeah.
Thank you, Karen. That was so beautifully spoken. Thank you. And
Thank you.
so heartfelt. I was very moved and touched.
Thank you.
So you talked about a fantasy,
Hmm.
and we talked about the challenge that women have in wanting to take responsibility for their own happiness and realizing that happiness is an inside job is because women have a fantasy about what marriage is supposed to be. And because they live in this fantasy unconsciously, they're not able to see truly that they have to find their happiness in themselves because the fantasy is what they think is going to fulfill their happiness. Can you read the list of things that we've learned over working with women for me over a dozen years and understanding the fantasies that women naturally and unconsciously have because of our culture and society and the movies and the
Yeah.
soap operas and the books we read as kids. Women seem to hang on to and incorporate a fantasy into their life and what marriage is supposed to be.
Yep. And I know what I'm about to share with you, the fantasies that we have of marriage as women through working on myself and getting really honest with myself about my own fantasy, and then working with hundreds of women who it's fascinating. Many, the majority of the women I work with have these same fantasies. It's very universal. And
Hmm.
when we can see these and be honest about them, that's the first step in moving forward and letting these things go so that we can experience marriage for what it really is and experience ourselves for who we really are.
So, Karen, I just want to emphasize for some of our new listeners is the reason why we do these videos is for the women to see themselves
Mm,
in what we're discussing. And
yeah.
sometimes it's really hard, or you might think, "Oh, that's not me." But over the years that we've worked with women, what we're sharing is kind of a universal theme that shows up repeatedly, regardless of a woman's age or any experience that she's had. And that's why we can use these as a ways to for women to look at themselves and see the things that they can change, that they can be responsible. That doesn't require their husband to change at all. But if they can look at these things and see themselves in it and say, oh my gosh, I do have a fantasy. I didn't realize how much this was playing in. What can I do and how is that affecting my marriage and how is it limiting me and the experience of myself?
Well said. And to also know the other piece in that is that we do these things unconsciously.
Yeah.
And then that's really important to understand. And that was hard for me in the beginning of doing this work for myself because I always wanted to float on the surface of all the positive things and didn't realize that I had to go into my unconscious and see the limiting things about myself or even the negative things about
Mm.
myself in order to get to the positive experience of me and
Truly,
my
yeah.
marriage and my life
Mm.
truly, that there is
Yeah.
a big difference between faking it
Yeah.
and truly experiencing it.
Yeah. Thank
So
you.
these are the fantasies that we've realized are very common for women when it comes to marriage. The first is that everything is just going to work out and everything will just fall into place. The husband is the knight in shining armor who was there to rescue her from the hardships of life. Hmm. Love is all you need. I was sharing with David as we were getting ready for the video. That was the theme of my marriage, like
Oh,
or the theme of my wedding. So my whole wedding was a fantasy, and that's really common too. Is this
yeah.
love is all you need?
Yeah, it's almost like this that women like very in the years I work with them, they want to believe that in an unconscious level that it's a never-ending romance.
Yes,
A never-ending romantic date is their fantasy with what their husband is supposed to be and the marriage is supposed to be like.
that's a beautiful way to put
Yeah.
it. I will always have somebody to have my back and take care of me.
Hmm.
Marriage isn't supposed to be hard.
What is it supposed to be?
It's supposed to be hard work.
No, no,
Oh,
meaning in the fantasy, it's supposed to be, they want to
it's
believe
supposed
it's
to be
supposed to be,
easy,
yeah,
and it
to
links
be in
back to
love.
that first one that it
Yeah,
just works out and it
yeah,
always falls into place. And oh,
yeah,
this is a good one. We're always on the same page.
yeah,
That was a huge fantasy of mine that like somehow magically my husband and I were going to be on the same page
yeah,
all the time.
yeah,
And the more I understand what marriage really is and put in the hard work to have
yeah.
a lovely and rewarding marriage,
Mhm.
is that we're seldom on the same page because we're two different people and
Yeah,
that's okay.
that's okay.
Um, the next one is we are supposed to be best friends. And oftentimes for women and myself included, I've seen this in myself, that means he's supposed to be my best girlfriend. He's
Yeah,
supposed to be just like my best girlfriend and listen to all my challenges and listen to me vent and chatter away. And that's a common complaint that I've had in my relationships and that I hear from the women I work with is we never have long talks. My husband never wants to talk and never shares with me what's going on, and
mm,
that's because there's very fundamental differences between men and women, and they're not supposed to be our best girlfriends. That's what our best girlfriends are for, or what
yeah,
what
yeah,
our relationship with
mm,
ourselves
yeah,
is
it's true.
for.
Yeah,
So the next one is that we will be together forever, no matter what.
yeah,
And then that he should love me no matter what, no matter what I do. Um, no matter, I shared about this in the video we did on weight, no matter how much I weigh, no matter how much I let myself go, or any of those things, no matter how mean I am, or insensitive or distant I am, he should love me no matter what.
yeah,
So, yeah, so those are the common fantasies.
yes.
And
Thank you.
holding on to this and thinking this is what's supposed to make us happy prevents us from being able to understand and know that we're supposed to find our happiness within, and that's
Yeah,
where it really lives.
yeah. And interestingly, Karen, you focused on helping women understand that this is unconscious.
Yeah.
And it's a tape that runs in the background while, of course, if you sat down with any woman and you asked them about any one of these things you mentioned, they would say, of course that's not true. I know better than that. But what happens unconsciously, there's this tape running culturally that we have this unexpected fantasy that's supposed to be met and it can't, and it's just very very unconsciously running in the background.
Yeah.
So can you read the quote from Mandy Hale as a way to further emphasize what's happening when women aren't looking for their happiness within themselves?
Happiness is an inside job. Do not assign anybody else that much power over your life.
And what
That
does that
when
mean, Karen?
that when we're unwilling or haven't been taught, don't know how to find our happiness within, we're going to naturally be looking for that happiness in somebody else or in something else outside of us. And unknowingly, in doing that,
Hmm.
we give all of our power away over how we are going to experience ourselves and our lives. And we get caught then of the tape of it's all these factors outside of me that are the reason why I'm unhappy that are the reason why I can't go after my dreams, that are the reason why I don't have what I want in my marriage or my life. And like I said earlier in the video, that is one big giant trap to never be happy. When I relinquish that power and look for my happiness outside of me, there's nothing left for me within me to grab on and do what I need to do for myself, because I've given that job over to external factors that I
In
have no
in a
control over.
marriage, in a
Yeah,
marriage, who is a woman giving that power over to?
to our husbands.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
can you just say that in the context of a husband?
yeah. That as women, when we're not doing the work to find our happiness within ourselves and we're married, we give that job, we assign that job for our happiness to our husbands, and we give all of our power away to our husbands to make us happy. And they can't. They can't. No one can make us happy but ourselves. And so they can't make us happy. And when they can't, because we've lost ourselves, we become entangled in them, looking for our happiness in them. We become victims to that experience and we're trapped. There's no way out.
Yeah. And we really believe, the women really believe, that their husbands is the source of their unhappiness.
Yeah.
That they're convinced that it's my husband, and that's the reason he does this, he does this, he does this, he does that. And because of all of those things, he's distant. He doesn't talk to me. We barely connect anymore. We feel like roommates. I feel like everything's on me. All of those same messages that we hear from women over and over again are because they've given away their power to their husband for their happiness. So they naturally think that their husband is the source of their unhappiness rather than realizing, no, the happiness is in me. And what we're trying to teach is that when you can take back your power as a
Mm.
woman and find your happiness within yourself, you no longer are projecting on your husband as the source. And actually, when you're happy within yourself, you start seeing your husband from a place of being happy, and you start seeing your husband as the man you fell in love with, and you see his kindness, and you see him for who he is, and the gentleman he is, and the kindness, and also his faults, but not in a judgmental way, but just accepting him as human and realizing that, you're pretty lucky that you married a man that treats you so good and cares about you when you realize that you find your happiness within. So, can you talk a little bit about, Karen, at a very deep level, why married women don't want to realize that happiness is an inside job? What are
Yeah.
some of the internal challenges and struggles besides the fantasy of
Mhm.
why, women will read these quotes and say, "Oh, of course, happiness is an inside job. Don't assign anybody that much power over your life." Yeah, that's right. But
Mhm.
what is preventing them from feeling that in the heart and actually doing the work to find their happiness within themselves and freeing their husband from that burden that is impossible to achieve?
Well, I think it's important to know is what I'm about to share with you. These are the limitations that we have within ourselves, that we we hold ourselves back from being able to find our happiness within. And you might think, well, why do we do that? Why
Yeah.
why do we have these limitations and beliefs within ourselves that we give all of our power away and we don't do what we need to do to be happy? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And at a fundamental level, as humans, because of how the mind works, we're terrified of change. We are
Mm,
terrified of the unknown, because we've gone through a lot of life experiences. We've gone through a lot of change that
mm,
causes heartbreak and loss and really difficult feelings. And so we begin to protect ourselves and lives in our
mm,
lives and in our marriages. And how we do that is by unconsciously creating these beliefs and limitations so that we don't step into change and we
mm,
don't step into the unknown. So the only way we're going to resolve that and going to step into
mm,
change is by seeing these things within ourselves and being honest
mm.
that they're there.
Great.
So why don't married women want to realize happiness as an inside job? I will have to be responsible for my own happiness. Meaning I can't blame somebody else. Like I can't blame my husband for why I'm miserable in my life or why I haven't accomplished the things that I wanted to accomplish, or that I have the life that I have. At a fundamental level, we feel that we're too much work. And why? Because we've never known who we are. And why do we never know who we are? I won't like what I see when I face myself.
Yeah.
Because in order, and this has been a hard lesson for me, but a very empowering one that's allowed me to completely transform my life and my marriage, is that I have to go in and I have to do the hard work to uncover these things in myself and see the ways I don't like myself and to see the ways I don't feel good about myself so that I can let those things go and then experience who I really am. And that's hard work and it can be really terrifying to do that.
Thank you, Karen.
Mm-hmm.
So kind of wrapping things up, I think the essential theme is to realize as long as you're looking for somebody else to make you happy,
Mm-hmm.
you never develop the inner skill to find it within yourself. So as long as you're looking for somebody else to make you happy, you can never develop the skill to find happiness within yourself. It's kind of like being a parent. If as a parent you're giving your children money or not, or trying to protect them from life's dangers. I know that's a very common thing we think we're supposed to do as parents, to protect our children. But if we always are protecting our children, they can't find life and can't go into life and be resilient, to find their way, to know how to manage the hardships in life. They become very weak and not able to deal with life's challenges. So when we seek happiness from somebody else, the same thing happens to us. We never develop the ability to find it within ourselves because we're so dependent on somebody else to give that to us. Just like children, when we rob them of the opportunity to grow and learn in life, we're taking away the opportunity for them to find the resilience that allows them to thrive in life. So it's a very, hopefully that might be helpful from another perspective. So can you wrap up things for us today,
Yeah.
Karen?
So I think just one more thing that I wanted to add about why
Sure.
it's so hard for us to find our happiness
Oh,
within and to do the things that we've been talking about today and to do that hard work is that you have to understand that at a fundamental level, because of how we work as humans and how terrified we are of change, and letting go of what we've always known, is that it's terrifying to want to find my happiness within myself, because then I have to let go of my fantasy
mm.
and all of my hopes and dreams that I thought my fantasy would give me.
Well, can you repeat that again? That was so
Mm.
beautiful, Karen. Yeah.
It's terrifying to want to find my happiness within myself, because then I have to let go of my fantasy and all of my hopes and dreams that I thought my fantasy would give me.
Well,
And we're
beautiful.
so scared to risk that
Mhm.
because of the unknown. Well, where how are my hopes and dreams going to come true? How am
Yeah.
I going to get what I have always wanted? And we have to realize that that's what we get caught in. It's not because we're bad or wrong or there's something wrong
Mm,
with us. It's just a fundamental fear that we have as humans of
mm,
change.
mm.
And when I find my happiness within, I really am taking a risk of what I've always known, but I have to be willing to make that leap, to make that jump. Or as David was just saying, we'll never know what it truly means to be happy.
Thank you.
So,
That's a
thank
pretty good wrap up there.
it is.
Yeah.
Thank you to all of our viewers who have been
Yeah.
with us today. There's someone made a comment. How do you get that power back? Let's talk.
Yeah.
Um, it, it it's it's simple, but it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of commitment, a lot of courage, because it doesn't just happen. We have to learn how, and we need a guide. We need someone to help us through the stories we've created and all
Mhm.
the crazy tricks that we have in our mind that we fool ourselves into maybe thinking that we're there or we know how to do this. That's what I did. And it was a huge wake up call to realize, oh no, I haven't, or I would have a happy marriage. And so let's get on a call and we'll just have a conversation.
Yeah.
I will help you get really clear on the real issues in your marriage
Mhm.
and get out of the stories and help you get clarity. And if we're a good fit to work together, then we can talk about that. If not, that's okay too. I promise you will get more out of this
Mhm.
call than any therapy session you've had,
Mhm.
any book that you've read. I know because I've lived it. And that's the feedback I get from my clients as well. So I would love to have a conversation. You can private message me and we will find a time to talk. So thank you so much for
Mhm.
watching. Thank you so much, David, for being
Yeah.
here and
Thank you, Gareth.
being a part of this.
And thank you, Karen, for being so heartfelt and genuine. And it's very obvious that you're living this work and it's part of your life and your marriage. And thank you for being you and sharing to all of these women so they can have a role model and see a possibility of a different way. And this isn't meant for everybody, and but some people that it resonates with, and they can know that there is a way out, and there's a way out not only in their marriage but also in their whole life to open themselves up to possibilities and learn to be true to themselves and find the joy and happiness that they've always sought. And so thank you for being a role model and being here to share this with the women. And I hope everybody has a lovely day.
Yeah, we'll see you again next week.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye bye.